So, herzlich willkommen hier in unserem Fintech-Stream zur 4. Präsentation an diesem Morgen. Und ich freue mich sehr, Ihnen Stephan Rind vorzustellen. Er ist CEO und Founder of Brickmark Group und wird heute über das ganz interessante Thema Tokenisierung sprechen. Und damit ist es your stage.
Dankeschön. Thank you, Anja. Hello, welcome to DKF. It's my first time to be here. It's a big pleasure to join you and to talk about the future of smart digital securities. It was kind of interesting last week. We had the annual shareholder meeting of Berkshire Hathaway, and the legendary investor Warren Buffett talked about when he was asked about the future of Bitcoin and what he thinks the value of Bitcoin is. You can give me any Bitcoin in the world for $25, but I rather would invest the $25 in a house or a piece of land in my neighborhood. This shows a little bit the discrepancies we see right now in the market. In addition, a couple of days after the Omaha shareholder meeting, we had a big turmoil in the crypto markets. So-called stable coins on an algorithmic basis broke together, Terra Luna, last week, which created a big turmoil in the market. And as Brickmark Group is in this area of tokenization of real-world asset, we think that actually the crash of last week shows that the future will be real estate or real asset-backed securities with the benefit of crypto markets, real-time trading and settlement. So I will give you a short introduction today about the tokenization market, use cases which we have done. We are one of the few companies in the market who really have done already real transactions, and I'm happy to walk you through, and then we can discuss any further questions. So Brickmark was founded in 2018. My background is I'm from the banking world, investment banking in the US and Germany, and I was running a public real estate company, Colonial Real Estate, for 10 years until 2012. And when I looked in 2017, many people came to me and said, oh, the world is changing. Blockchain and cryptocurrencies are the future. Gravity doesn't exist anymore. You have to invest. I was looking into the market. And I also had issues in understanding the value of Bitcoin, who was reaching $20,000 the first time that time. But I was really fascinated about the technology, blockchain technology, which allows a peer-to-peer trading of assets and goods without a centralized systems anymore. And when we looked into the market, especially our focus is real estate, but this is also true for any private market like private equity, any illiquid market. So if you look at the real estate market overall, we talk about a total asset value. It's the largest asset class in the world with over 200 trillion, 200,000 billion of market values. And only 7% of this huge market is actually accessible for investors, is tradable through stocks, bonds, or share units, and 93% are locked in private hands and private ownerships. So when we calculated the numbers of what's the market potential just in the real estate market for tokenization of assets, and we looked at investable real estate, so we're not talking about any farmland in Mongolia, but real developed markets, we come up with 55 trillion. And that's about the size of the global stock market today. So that's the kind of market potential we see. And when you look at the projections which have been made from various institutions, Deloitte or Finoa, the market for tokenized assets will grow with 62% compound annual growth rate. There are so many projects right now in preparation already. And this whole thing, what are the key drivers, has been spurred by recent legislation and regulations in the market. So we did a large transaction in 2020 on Bahnhofstraße in Switzerland. I will show you later. But only since last year, we have the first regulated, centralized digital exchanges. SDX in Switzerland, which is a 100% subsidiary of Sixt, has started their market with the first issue. We see legal clarity, and we see also a vast environment on the infrastructure side. So you haven't seen any institutional players in this market for many years because of the uncertainties, and there was no institutional grade quality and infrastructure in the market. But then players like Fidelity, for example, but also Goldman Sachs, State Street, really known big custodian institutional players in the market, have entered the market and built the infrastructure which is needed to have institutional players entering the market. So token economies will come, exchanges will switch from the traditional system, which still has inefficiencies like, settlement of bonds or stocks with T+2 or T+5 in an environment where everything is digital and it could be easily done in real time and with a fraction of the cost we see in the current markets. Adoption has started, as I said. So JP Morgan is actually a good example. If you take Jamie Dimon, the CEO who started in 2018 and 19, Bitcoin is a threat, it's hell, it's evil. And then 2 years later, JP Morgan created their own coin in the market, JP Morgan coin, and has created also a private blockchain for international secure payment systems. But we have also seen on the exchange side, SDX received by FINMA full regulatory approval as a digital exchange and custody solution. We have seen Deutsche Börse AG with the acquisition of Crypto Finance AG in Switzerland last year for about €500 million to tap into this market. And part of the acquisition was also around 3 billion of tokenized crypto assets as a custodianship. But we also see international exchanges, Singapore, BACT, which is part of ICE, New York Stock Exchange Group, expanding into the market and just had a great IPO on the New York Stock Exchange through a shell company. So looking into real use cases, this was our first brick. Brickmark stands for brick and mortar, and mark for Deutschmark, which was our holy currency in Germany before the euro came. So it stands for stability. The idea is to create currencies or products which are fully digital, but with a high stability and real value backing. And this was a 130 million transactions. It's still the world record. It's the largest tokenization of a real property ever happened in the world. And because it was Bahnhofstraße, it created a lot of attention worldwide. Even as a CEO of a public company for 10 years, I was really surprised about the fact that within 24 hours after the press release, we had about 144 headlines around the world, from Vietnam to Canada, Alaska. And interesting here was also that we had an institutional player, RFR holding, $16 billion private real estate holding as our counterpart, who accepted the vendor loan in a tokenized format by accepting Brickmark tokens. But with the development which is going on right now, we have some selected projects right now. We are working on a digital bond offering on SDX in the summer of this year. It's a real estate-backed bond, 320 million in volume. It's holding 2 Swiss properties with cash flow generation, 10-year maturity. One is the Blue Radisson Grand Hotel and Casino in St. Gallen, and there's a shopping center, West Center, attached to it. So you have a company which will issue a bond in a digital format, and the bond is backed by the real estate and the cash flow of the real estate behind it. The interesting thing here, and this was an innovation which STX started last year, you know, many institutional players, insurance companies, pension funds, are not really into the whole thing. You know, I can experience from my own last 3-4 years in the industry, you know, still many institutional players say, oh my God, digital means crypto, crypto means money laundering, we don't want to tap into this whole thing. But if you talk about security, asset-backed token, this is fully regulated with KYC, AML, and every issuer knows every investor on a real-time basis on its dashboards whenever a transaction happens. So from an issuer point of view, this is a brand new world. You know on a real-time basis all your investors in your product. You can communicate with them. You can add voting rights to a bond issue. So you can combine characteristics of equity, debt, and hybrid products with each other, which doesn't exist in the real world. This, I think, is the big innovation splash we will see. And you can make these investments smart. In this case, STX decided a dual-part bond offering, which we will use as well. So you have one underlying capital market product with 2 ISIN numbers. Means, in the case of the 6 Group bond, which was issued last year, 100 million was fully digital settlement, digital custody. 50 million was traditional. The traditional bond has an ISIN number, and the digital bond has an ISIN number. One underlying. Investors can invest into the traditional bond and then switch seamlessly into the digital bond when they see there's more liquidity or when they have their digital custodianship in place. So you can switch between the two worlds, digital and traditional, with the same underlying instrument, which I think is a good entry point for institutions who are not really certain right now or don't have the infrastructure in place, but enjoy also the benefits of these innovations. And talking about smart investments, this is an example what we are working on right now. We just acquired a company in Luxembourg called Castle Collection. And this is about accessing asset classes which doesn't even really existed so far. So many castles are undervalued, don't have a good underlying business model behind. We already had 2 castles signed, and they are part of the portfolio. And a smart security in this way is you will be able to invest into a Castle Collection token, and you will become, with a 1,000 euro investment, a co-owner of a collection of 12 historic castles in Europe. At the same time, the token enables you to become a club member and enjoy privileges like discounted rates on bookings, special privileges on events. So you combine a bond investment with a Miles & More card, all in one product. And this is what I think is going to be the smart digital projects in the future. So if you just look at the structuring of a tokenization, it's actually not that complicated. So you have the underlying asset, you have the assimilation. Right now in the real estate space, you need an SPV, since land registries, Grundbücher, are not digital yet. You have to go through a corporate structure. But I can also tell you that, for example, the land registry in Zug, Crypto Valley, is already working on a beta version of a full distributed ledger technology-based land registry. And at the end of the day, a registry is nothing else than a DLT, a ledger. So it's a very natural thing which we see in the future. Then you do the securitization, Verbriefung, like in the normal world. And on top of the securitization, you create the token with a smart contract coded on a blockchain. This can be a private or a public blockchain. And the tokenization, the smart contract, adds certain utilities and rights and functions and obligations on top of the regular security, whether it's a bond, a convertible, or a stock. So in this case, you can really go like we did, for example, in the case of the Brickmark token. It's a bond, but the bond is linked to the profits, the increase of the net asset value of the properties. And token investors have a voting right on certain issues. So usually a bond just receives interest rates. In this new world, you can have equity kicker, preferred equity, characteristics which are very hard to define in the European legal system, embedded into one product. And that's, I think, is the big innovation going forward. And then you have a smart digital security at the end. With the learnings we went through, we found out that when we completed the transaction, there was many people of our network, insurance companies, real estate funds, public real estate companies who came to us and said, this is very interesting, we want to learn more about it. Can we do a pilot together? So we thought with the experience we did ourselves and the kind of painful experience we had over 2.5 years dealing with regulators who doesn't know what we're talking about, who are not familiar with the technology, we went through it with our own money. And with the experience we had, we created now what we call BrickGate. So it's a portal, it's a platform where we do tokenization as a service, mainly for institutional clients. So funds, insurance companies, private property owners, developers can come to us. That's our idea. We look for a financing, whether it's equity related, debt related, or hybrid related. We sit together, we create a token structure, a design, we do the coding, and then we are connected to custodians for digital assets, because once you create this digital security, there's no centralized custodian system in place right now. So it's decentralized. As an issuer, you have the choice to choose and to save a lot of cost versus the traditional system. And then we work with exchanges and trading facilities, OTFs, MTFs, and there will be more and more on the regulated side, where you can have proper securities listed in a regulated environment with rules and regulations we all know from the public markets today. So not the crypto gambling, Panama or Cyprus-based exchanges, and then it's going to be fed into the investor world. So what it creates in the future, and this is not the question of if this is going to take place, it's about when, because it will take place. I had the conversation with the head of digital development at NASDAQ about 6 months ago, and he said, we tested digital exchange systems, and on the cost basis from the exchange point of view, we are saving between 80 and 85% of fixed costs, while just migrating from the traditional to the digital system. Seamless trading, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. Real-time settlement of transactions. Institutions doesn't have to wait when they put an order in to receive the security in 2 or 5 days. It's going to happen real-time in the future. So it will happen. It's the question when it will happen. And I think what we have seen last week in the crypto world shows, and you have already seen the comments by regulators like the SEC, but also European Financial Authority, that there will be more regulation in this space, but at the same time enjoying the benefits of having a full digital environment. So that's a typical tokenization process, and with a platform in place, and there's also other players in the market and increasing, the scoping, the concept takes about 30 to 60, 90 days, depending on the complexity of the product, which is wished. Then the execution and customization is taking 3 to 6 months. On the platform, the issuer can be fully integrated, and there can be KYC, AML features, directly embedded on the website of the issuer in the future. And then you have the STO, security token offering, like an IPO in the real world. And then it's about lifecycle management and custody. So if you have a token, it's about having annual virtual shareholder meetings. When you have voting rights, you can communicate directly through the platform with your investors, and with a push of the button who holds your product in this particular second around the world. So I think it's a great improvement what we have seen so far. We have some interesting customers from the private equity world, but also increasingly in the banking side and from insurance companies looking into this market, want to see first experience in that. And I think to answer the question, is tokenization the future? I'm very certain it will be, and I'm happy to answer your question. Thank you for your time. It's Linux. It's Linux. It's an open platform. You refer to what blockchains we are offering. And right now, we started with Ethereum. Our Brickmark token was an ERC20 token. But we also have seen inefficiencies, very high increase in cost. And over the last 6 to 12 months, we have seen and we have talked to many other protocols which have done a great job in improving the network security issues and so forth. So we can also work now with Tezos, we can work with Polygon and others. And many blockchains are very open because they see that this kind of application, security token, will be a future. And so they're quite open. So we're very open to blockchains. We also can create private blockchains which have high security. On the other hand, it's not decentralized. So it's really up to the client's wishes and needs, what he's looking for.
Thank you very much about this presentation. So my question would be, how about the secondary market? So is it easy to list these hybrid products on public exchanges or trading venues, or are there some regulatory restrictions when you say you combine equity with bonds? Could be a regulatory challenge maybe, and also related to that, do you also support your clients in finding fair values and evaluating prices for the secondary markets if potentially an investor needs to or wants to reorganize his assets and sell maybe those tokens?
Yes, a very good question. You have to decide whether your product wants to be, publicly distributed, also to retail investors. Then you have to run to the typical prospectus of the current legislation you choose. So it's pretty much like a normal security offering with a full prospectus, a legal opinion by law firms. This is improving, but frankly, we are very early still. So we have seen the first digital bonds right now. A secondary market needs to be developed. Liquidity has to be developed. This is why I think entering the market with a dual part system where you have one underlying and the investor can choose between traditional or digital is a very good entry point. But liquidity has to come up with. And I think it's very important. I mean, we are now looking at projects, issues of 1.2 billion over the next 12 months, which for this sector is the world, which is for the traditional capital markets nothing. Especially in real estate, it's really small. But I think we're looking at light tower projects who can really, also create some public attention to the whole thing. And then I think the market will develop and will come. And we will also see, turmoils in the market on the crypto side will also, fire up this market environment. So yeah, public distribution is a normal regulation prospectus requirement. If you do it private, institutional to institutions, like also Deutsche Börse is experiencing right now with swaps on various baskets, for example, very complicated issues which can be easily done now on a digital basis, then it's less complicated. But we're early. It's an early market.
So I guess Brickmark needs to make some money on your fee structure. How do you incorporate your fee structure into the deal? Or how transparent is the fee structure?
Well, if you look at the three phases, and I think it's very similar. I mean, there's other players in the market as well. Tokeny in Belgium is a very good company in this space. Euronext is already a stakeholder, and there's others as well. Mainly, the other platforms are kind of offering tokenization on anything. You know, it can be real estate, it can be diamonds, gold, Ferraris, artworks. Basically, everything can be tokenized in the future. So in the scoping and concept phase, we are kind of putting together and working on an advisory basis, depending on the complexity of the whole thing. On the execution side, there's programming involved with a kind of fixed fee structure, and then success fee based if the listing takes place and has been successful. So there's also a success part to it. And then on the life cycle management and custody, it's pretty much like a depot bank custodianship relationship. So for the management, we talk about 10 to 20 basis points on an annual basis to manage the life cycle of the security until it expires, or in case of an equity related, it kind of lasts forever. So it's a mixture of fixed structure, fixed fee, and success fee based model. Any further questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Stephan. Thanks for this good presentation.
Thank you very much.